dark. Red and blue views, truth in the middle. No script, just thought raw and a little civil. Every question's got layers, so we peel back facts. From the real to the surreal, we don't hold back. Voices collide where ideas ignite. You tuned in, now step into the fight. This is more than talk, this is thought that counts. Welcome to the feed where the signal mounts.
Okay, let's dive in. We've got a really interesting stack of source material today. Notes and transcripts pulled from a YouTube live stream panel discussion.
Right, this one titled, "You Can't Rush Greatness, But You Can Miss It," on the OTW Live channel.
Yeah, and what struck us right away is, well, this isn't your typical polished content. It's pretty raw.
Oh, absolutely. Dynamics, sometimes pretty intense, definitely chaotic in places.
Yeah.
A real snapshot of a live online conversation, lots of people involved.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is really to try and cut through some of that intensity, pull out the most important nuggets, the key insights and perspectives that actually emerged.
See what was really going on beneath the surface of all that back and forth.
Think of us as just helping you navigate this high-energy online space. We'll point out some of the big themes, maybe some surprising details.
You just try to make sense of the different currents running through the whole discussion.
All right, let's get into it then. The first thing that really hits you is this incredibly strong sense of identity, this community built around the out-of-this-world branding. They're not exactly subtle about it.
No, not at all. It's almost, well, aggressively self-important, you could say. You hear these phrases constantly like, this ain't normal, this ain't from around here, this right here, out of this world.
Yeah, or a cosmic event, not Earthborn, but we taken the throne.
War of the Wise, raw truth, no filters, no toys, whole scene disrupt. I mean, they're clearly positioning themselves as something radically different from everything else.
And they explicitly contrast themselves with other online shows, too, like saying, all the shows act wild, but they all sound tame.
Or this ain't TikTok fluff, but Netflix noise. It's like they're saying, look, we're the real deal. This is the unfiltered chaos you won't find anywhere else.
And they're super clear about how you, the audience, get involved. It's about joining the panels yourself, being active in the chat, hitting like buttons, sharing the content.
Right, community engagement seems absolutely central to their whole thing.
And on the money side, the sources mention a few ways they're supported. They've got membership tiers linked to video popularity.
Yeah, the idea seems to be the higher the tier, the better content you're going to get, something like that. Plus, direct donations via a tip jar, Ko-fi, PayPal. They mentioned Nightbot for links, streaming on Twitch and Kick, too.
And you really get the sense of this whole ecosystem with specific people involved. The hosts are constantly shouting out audience members, panelists.
Oh, yeah, loads of names popping up. We saw Austin Murphy, Cynthia, R. Paul, Danny Skylark, Timmy Carini, Christina, Var Billy, Mr. L. Perot, a.k.a. Wizard, Red #40, Jack, Dub.
Keep going. Tar, a.k.a. TK Luna, Paul, Rebecca, Dave Jeeps, Rachel Zinger, T. Rains, Snafu Snaps, Chris Rose, Freedom Grower, Dr. D-Head, AJ, a.k.a. G-Flow, Mr. Pie, Lou, Jeff, Chuck. It's a long list.
It really is. And there's even a specific shout out from OTW giving credit to Paul for helping elevate both OTW and Jack in that particular space.
Yeah, that shows those, internal dynamics. Who's seen as contributing, who gets acknowledged.
It adds to that feeling of it being a real, an online community, but with its own history and maybe even a hierarchy.
And it's not just talking heads, right? They use sound effects. There was talk about AI music using soundboards.
Right. At one point, they apparently played a definition of the word zebra. It just reinforces that unscripted, slightly chaotic live vibe.
So alongside this really big, almost aggressive online persona, the conversation also went surprisingly deep. Personal philosophy, inner states. Jack, in particular, shared a really strong perspective.
He did. Focused on your being over your doing. That point really stood out.
Can you unpack that a bit?
Well, his argument is basically that our actions flow directly from our inner state. So if you are angry, you inevitably do anger. He really pushes this idea that you need to focus on your internal state first and foremost.
And he got personal with it too, didn't he?
Yeah, really personal. Talked about knowing what it's like to be alone, betrayed, losing things. But finding relief, he said, by letting go of doubts, worry, anger. giving it to God was his framing.
He also mentioned embracing mystery, trying to stay focused on the present moment.
But what's interesting is that someone on the panel actually critiqued him for that, suggested he was, like, displacing his faith by sending his purpose video around instead of just purely believing in himself.
Wow, okay. So even when someone's sharing something vulnerable, there's still that layer of scrutiny, that questioning within the group.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's another moment someone mentioned transitioning from being, quote, Christian-like, Christ-like, back to their normal self.
Which implies a sort of conscious decision about how they present their faith publicly.
Seems like it. And then there was that really direct debate about Christian belief. One person claimed believers aren't sinners, and that was immediately very firmly countered.
With the argument that everyone is a sinner. Yeah, I saw that.
What's fascinating here is how these online spaces become platforms for people not just to, share their deepest beliefs, but also to work through the challenges of living those beliefs, especially when others are watching and questioning.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How do you navigate maintaining your inner state, trying to live consistently with what you believe when you're in these very public, sometimes confrontational online discussions?
Yeah, it's a tough balance.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit from the really personal stuff, the panel also spent a lot of time wrestling with bigger societal questions, especially around work, wealth, opportunity.
Oh yeah, that whole discussion around economic struggle and accessibility, it got pretty intense.
There was that one anecdote that really stuck with me about needing a high school diploma just to be a janitor.
Right. It immediately makes you question, well, why? Why is that barrier there for that kind of job?
Exactly. And this seemed to lead into a core tension we saw throughout the source material. This contrast between emphasizing individual accountability, get up off your ass, make things happen, versus highlighting systemic issues.
Yeah, the feeling that the working class is being exploited, those two ideas were definitely rubbing up against each other.
And you saw these really different viewpoints on how to actually change things. Timmy suggested, starting businesses, hiring fairly, creating wealth for employees?
That was his solution. But Dove immediately pushed back, basically saying, look, that reality just isn't achievable for most people. It's not that simple.
And this is where some of that really controversial language popped up in the source material.
Yeah, the idea that, quote, intelligent people find opportunities easily, contrasted with dumb people being lost. And even using that phrase, chosen retards, which is, it's jarring.
But then almost immediately they followed up with these concrete examples of creating opportunity, like turning coconut shells into charcoal to start a company, coming out of a slum.
Or just knocking on doors, trying to sell projects like solar panels without needing any initial capital. These examples were used to argue against making excuses, basically.
Especially now with the internet offering free access to tools like ChatGPT, things like that. The argument was that excuses for not succeeding just don't hold water anymore.
And there was a whole debate about capitalism itself, someone wanting to bring it, quote, back to the average fucking yo-yo.
Plus, that personal story, someone earning 6 figures easily in sales versus feeling totally exploited, just toiling away for someone else, it really highlights that perceived unfairness.
Definitely. There was also this interesting reframing. I heard the idea that even low-salary jobs can offer compensation through learning opportunities.
How so?
Well, the framing was that you're essentially being paid to learn valuable skills or gain experience, even if the paycheck itself isn't huge.
Huh. Okay. This whole section really makes you pause and think about your own perspective, doesn't it? Like, where do you see the balance between individual effort and those bigger systemic factors when it comes to economic opportunity?
Yeah, and just how do you personally navigate the economic systems you find yourself in? It's complex stuff.
Okay, but hang on, because the conversation then took a really sharp turn. It went into this seriously dense landscape of, current events, geopolitics, online investigations.
Oh man, that section was sprawling. And often connected different ideas in really unexpected, sometimes conspiratorial ways.
It covered so much ground. There was talk about a potential one big bill leading to an internet of medical things.
Yeah, viewed as a way to profit off individuals' health data, essentially. And political figures like Trump and Biden were absolutely central. Claims about Trump being in the Epstein files.
And Trump calling Biden a clone.
Right. And the way they framed all that political drama was interesting, too, calling it WWE optics.
A distraction, yeah, from something bigger that's supposedly happening behind the scenes.
And the speculation around Elon Musk was pretty wild. Some suggesting he could be seen as a new antichrist or maybe a savior.
Leading people towards technology and away from, the natural order.
Something like that. They also mentioned the alignment of figures like Trump with big tech companies, Microsoft, Amazon contrasting them with others like Oracle and, well, Elon Musk again.
There was also this idea floating around of an impending financial reset, possibly linked to all this political drama being a distraction.
And the observation that the price of gold is skyrocketing was mentioned as a potential sign of that reset.
Now, a key player in this part of the discussion seemed to be someone called Snafu Snaps. He explicitly presented himself as a whistleblower, an investigator.
Yeah, he introduced these concepts, POGO, privately owned government-operated social media influencers, and something called Saharan Pogo.
And he made some really serious claims, saying he's exposing criminals, traitors, frauds, predators online.
He cited specific examples, too. Hank John Lewis, veteran charity fraud cover-ups involving names like Mike Stratton and Marfugel, something called a pedophile monograph, claims about servers linked to other countries.
He even claimed to be documenting death threats and working with agencies like Homeland Security, Arizona detectives.
Okay, but this is where the panel dynamics got really, really heated, because Snafu's claims were met with huge skepticism, especially from AJ, also known as Giflo.
What was the main sticking point?
The lack of arrests, basically.
Yeah.
The challenge was, if you're exposing all this stuff, where are the receipts? Where are the arrests? AJ didn't hold back, calling him a troll, a zebra, a psychopath.
Even a pedophile sympathizer during the exchange, yeah. Strong stuff.
Very. And Snafu pushed back hard, arguing his approach is different because he claims he knows the players. He insisted some people he's discussed have been arrested, mentioning someone named Izzy.
So it just highlighted that core debate within the source about what counts as proof, what constitutes success when you're doing these online investigations.
Exactly. And then right in the middle of all these huge, almost abstract theories, Mr. Pai shared this deeply personal, very real story.
About his sister's cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, stage 3. And her treatment journey. He contrasted the conventional medical route surgery, chemo, radiation, with natural health methods she was trying, like an alkaline diet, fasting, organic food.
And he felt the doctor's advice was detrimental.
He described his sister's experience, feeling that the doctor's advice led her to stop some of the natural things she was doing, which he believed hurt her condition. He used really strong language, feeling that medical professionals could act like pushers or were, quote, mambling things.
And this personal health crisis was then connected back to those broader themes we heard earlier.
Right back. Views on big pharma prioritizing treatments over cures for profit, the impact of processed food, and societal factors on health, and what was described as a kind of herd mentality and just trusting the medical system without question.
Wow. Were there other topics crammed in there too?
Oh yeah, it was dense. Brief mentions of the social credit score system, which apparently some political figures praised, historical optics around figures like Hitler or the Mustache Man, as he was called, and their relation to maybe fighting bankers or tyranny.
Okay.
And the idea that Western countries are being beta tested for things before they roll out in the U.S.
It's clear from this whole section that the participants are trying to connect this massive web of real-world events, personal experiences, online info.
It really underscores the challenge we all face, right? Try and figure out what's true, how to evaluate these incredibly intense, often conflicting claims about power, corruption, societal issues, whether we encounter them online or in the news.
It definitely makes you ask yourself, how do you navigate this flood of information? When you hear such different passionate viewpoints, how do you decide who or what to trust?
It's a big question.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the content of the discussion, but let's look for a minute at how that conversation actually happened. The source material gives us a pretty clear look at the interpersonal dynamics within the panel itself.
Yeah, and it wasn't always easy listening, that's for sure.
No, it got rough at times. You saw a real range of communication styles, though. OTW, the host, sometimes tried to mediate, keep the peace.
He even acknowledged changing his own game rules during the broadcast at one point. Reflected on being human, sometimes bending rules he'd set up himself.
But mixed in with that attempt at mediation were moments of really aggressive questioning, direct personal attacks.
And some pretty harsh name-calling.
Yeah.
People were throwing around things like cupcake, retard, zebra, pedophile sympathizer. It got nasty.
You saw it really clearly in specific arguments, that debate between Jack, Timmy, and Dove about economic opportunity, whether it's truly accessible.
Right. And the conflict involving Rasta, Chris, and Jack over Christian belief and how people actually live it out.
And of course, that really long, super heated back and forth between Snafu Snaps and AJG Flow that we just talked about. all centered on Snafu's claims and that demand for proof.
It really highlights how challenging it can be to have a productive conversation online when people are constantly interrupting, making personal attacks, or just completely dismissing someone else's point instead of actually engaging with the idea.
There was even advice given, like Cynthia suggesting people should just ignore online negativity and judgment.
But then you heard counter-arguments, people saying, well, actually, these online interactions can be impactful. They can reveal a lot about people.
And that whole idea of knowing someone from the internet versus knowing them in real life came up. How hard it can be to trust someone or judge their character based only on their online presence.
OTW even mentioned having a long-standing beef with someone named Flo, which just shows that these ongoing conflicts and competitions are kind of part of the landscape in this online world.
This section really prompts you to think about your own experiences online, doesn't it? How do you handle conflict or disagreement in digital spaces?
Yeah, what have you seen about the different ways people try to navigate these incredibly dynamic, sometimes really abrasive interactions?
Okay, finally, let's try and wrap up by looking at the underlying motivations. The sense of purpose that seemed to drive a lot of the people in this discussion. There's definitely a feeling of the fight, right? Or working towards something bigger.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw Jack talking about his continued goal, wanting to get to Washington, D.C. to try and make a difference.
And explaining that he sees potential in others because other people helped him along the way.
Right. And Snafu Snaps expressed this incredibly deep commitment to his work, saying he would literally die for this, despite all the skepticism and challenges he was facing right there on the panel and presumably elsewhere too.
That's intense dedication.
It is. And Mr. Pai shared that really honest reflection, feeling fallible, like he'd fallen back into the matrix sometimes by not taking a harder stance.
But he also had this sense that his current situation, helping his sister, might actually be a kind of divine intervention.
Yeah, finding meaning even in difficult circumstances. And OTW reflected on his own journey over 3 years doing the channel. He emphasized striving for authenticity. His words were keeping it as real as fuck.
Gaining experience, feeling untouchable because of that authenticity.
There was that one line that came up too, enlightenment is expensive on the ego. That really stuck with me. A powerful reflection on the personal cost, maybe, of pursuing deeper understanding or truth or authenticity.
These moments give you a glimpse, I think, into what drives people to engage so intensely in these online spaces and to tackle real-world issues through them.
It makes you consider what kind of personal growth or maybe what sacrifice might be involved in pursuing these strong beliefs and goals. Not just for the people on that panel, but maybe even for you in your own pursuits.
So, okay. We've taken a pretty deep dive into this fascinating, really complex stack of material from that OTW live stream. We've looked at that intense online identity and community.
The deeply personal philosophies that were shared.
Those heated debates around work and how society is structured.
That incredibly dense, sometimes chaotic landscape of current events, conspiracies, online investigations.
The sometimes abrasive panel dynamics, how people interacted.
And that underlying sense of purpose, the why behind it all.
Right. The sources really gave us this raw, unfiltered view of passionate, often conflicting viewpoints, shared right there in the heat of the moment online. Our goal was just to walk through that with you, pull out the key ideas, the perspectives that were there in the material provided.
Yeah, just lay it out.
So, thinking about the chaotic, contradictory, and deeply personal nature of these conversations we've just explored, what does that tell you about how people try to find truth today, how they debate it, how truth is even perceived in this digital age we're all living in?
And maybe on a more personal level, how do you navigate this landscape, this world of intense belief, conflicting claims, raw emotion? How do you find what's meaningful or what you can actually act on in your own life?